Hi, everyone. This is Rich Berliner from Connected Real Estate Magazine. We will be starting the webinar in about 1 minute. We're just letting everybody load in. So if you be patient for another moment, we will be starting shortly. Today's webinar is called Why Wi-Fi is Failing Your Business, sponsored by Motorola Solutions. Just some notes before we start. We will do what we can to answer all your questions during the webinar. If not, we will answer them during the Q&A session afterwards. Please ask all questions via the GoToWebinar control panel, which you should all have on your webinar platform. We are recording and will publish a link to the recording within a few days. Today's slides will be emailed to everyone who's on this call or is signed up. And if you'd like more information about this topic, please go to Connected REMag or to Motorola.com. So today I'd like to introduce our speakers from Motorola: Anatoly Delm, Jerry Gard, and Ken DeCipio. Jerry and Anatoly are with Motorola, and Ken is with Tavistock Realty. He will be joining us shortly. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Anatoly Delm with Motorola.
All right, Rich, thank you very much for that introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Anatoly Delm. I am the Director of Product Marketing here at Motorola Solutions, and with me is Jerry Gard, who's our Director of Engineering and Product Management. And you'll hear from Jerry in just a bit, followed by Ken DeCipio. But today I'm gonna go over how Wi-Fi is failing your business. We'll talk about how CBRS is here to fix that and to really kind of change the game for you. Jerry will take you through our MOTOTRBO NITRO product that runs on CBRS and tell you what makes it such an exciting addition to the Motorola Solutions portfolio. And then Ken and Rich will complete this webinar by helping you understand how you would apply that in a commercial real estate context. And then at the end, we'll answer all your questions. So if we can go to the next slide, please. You'll see again, we kind of repeat the claim that, hey, your Wi-Fi is failing you. And so what does that mean? When we talk to our customers, what does it mean when we hear that, hey, their Wi-Fi is just not doing what it's supposed to do? So if we go to the next slide, let me ask you a question here. Do you, in your everyday work, how often do you lose connections? And especially as you're, maybe you're on your laptop, maybe you're on your smartphone, you're connected to Wi-Fi, maybe you're moving around. Do you get those drops where you have to stop everything, stop whatever you're doing, focus on the device, focus on the software, possibly log it back into your VPN with all the fun passwords? And of course, these days it's multi-factor authentication, so you're waiting for that authentication text and everything else. And so while you're doing that, everything is stuck and you're focused on the device and not the work that you're trying to do. If you're on your property, you're trying to download something, maybe a streaming video, maybe it's just a blueprint, a manual, you've got a maintenance technician somewhere that needs to see a wiring diagram, and they're right in a place where there's just, the signal is not reaching them. So they're wasting time, they're trying to get back out to where the signal is, and they're just not able to keep doing work, and meantime, the clock is ticking. Are there dead zones on your property somewhere where you just don't have coverage and you kind of have to, again, work around those dead zones? All of those things we've heard from our customers are problems when they're trying to rely on Wi-Fi too much. And that's where, if we go to the next slide, we can actually see there's a reason these things happen. And it boils down to really a few things. The way that Wi-Fi is put together, the way the network is done, the way it uses spectrum, the way it provides coverage, and how it deals with mobility, all of these are things that make it less than suitable for anything other than really the smaller office environments, which is what it was designed for and what it was built for. So it really was built to be a simple wireless network for homes, for offices, not for mission critical environments. the way that it operates the spectrum, as in the radio frequencies that it uses, it's usually around the 2.4 or 5 gigahertz spectrum, particularly in North America. Those are unlicensed. And so what unlicensed means is literally you don't need a license. Literally anyone can transmit or receive in that spectrum. So which of course means anybody and everybody does. And other people's networks are going to share the same spectrum allocation that you're trying to be on. You can't prevent it and you cannot control it. Because it's shared spectrum, the power, the FCC or whatever regulatory agency oversees your territory, they're going to limit its power, and therefore they're going to limit its range. And you're going to have to compensate by putting a whole lot of access points and all the backhaul to make that happen. And then finally, when we talk about mobility, there really is no mobility solution within Wi-Fi, not in any robust way. So what happens is, even if you've got the same SID and you've got the same wireless network throughout a large property, as you move out of range of one access point and into another, you're very likely to lose connections, maybe for a short time, maybe for a longer time, because there's just not any kind of handoff mechanism. And that, by the way, that affects pretty much everyone. That affects people all around in different offices. Just as when you have Wi-Fi, even though in theory on the map you've got coverage everywhere, as you're moving around, those drops will happen. If we go to the next slide, some of the consequences of that. If you're trying to if you're trying to cover a large coverage area, you're going to need to install more access points. So that means that's more equipment to purchase, that's more equipment to install and maintain and secure. You're gonna, in terms of security, Wi-Fi, strong security tends to be optional. It's definitely possible to provide pretty good security on your Wi-Fi network, but you have to consciously do it, and very often people don't. So more often than not, there are security vulnerabilities within that Wi-Fi scenario. And then all traffic looks the same to that Wi-Fi network. And as a matter of fact, we would see that on the next slide. Traffic, all bits in most Wi-Fi implementations look pretty much the same. So therefore, you are not able to shape that traffic as well as you would like. And there are over-the-top solutions that kind of try to help you prioritize it, but it's not built into the system. And then finally, because of all that, because you need lots of access points, because you need lots of backhaul wiring, your security kind of goes over the top, and you have to pay very strict attention to it. It's difficult to scale. It requires a lot of investment to make that scalable. So as we'll see on our next slide, CBRS is here to address that. It's here to really change the game and to change the way that you do communications within this space. So let's kind of back up and talk about what is CBRS, what is OnGo. You can kind of see both of those things present on the slide. But the reason that the industry is so excited about going to CBRS, as we'll see on the next slide, it's because this is a whole new spectrum. It's new frequencies that the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC in the United States, has opened up for public use. That's an event that happens very, very rarely. And so having that has really kind of energized the industry to try to take advantage of that event. And on the next slide, you can see how what that actually does for our spectrum. So first off, there are 3 tiers of spectrum users. This spectrum used to belong to the military, and the military has priority on it, but that will not be a problem for you for reasons I'm going to explain shortly, but the military has priority on it. There are, the next level of priority is people who buy licenses from the FCC or apply for licenses from the FCC to have a permanent allocation of frequencies. But the most exciting thing about it is this tier that we've highlighted in blue. It's quote unquote the lowest tier, called general authorized access. However, in any given location, by law, GAA, or this general authorized access, must have more than 50% of spectrum. As a matter of fact, they must have 80% out of the 150 of spectrum, 80 megahertz out of 150 of spectrum available to them. So what's general authorized access? It's really this new innovative model for being able to have access to frequencies, to radio spectrum, without the need to apply to the FCC for a license. Now, you just heard me talk about, hey, there's unlicensed spectrum, and why is this different? That's because there's actually an online service called Spectrum Allocation Service that you connect to, and even though there's no license, you as the requester will have exclusive access to this spectrum. In other words, without having to apply to the FCC, without having to get an actual license, you, the organization, have 100% of the use of a frequency on that spectrum. There is no interference, there is no sharing with anybody else in your area. And that's what makes this so exciting. It's a whole different model for the FCC to be able to provide frequencies, to give you that flexibility, to give you that ease of use, without losing the benefit of exclusive use of that spectrum. Now, if we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the industry response to this FCC action. As I said, the industry it has been very excited about having this new capability, having something that's in a good chunk of spectrum. The industry formed something called the CBRS Alliance that consists of a very large number of vendors and members, including some of the ones here you see on the slide. And you can recognize a good number of these names. So these are, so there's some great first-rate companies that are supporting this standard. The CBRS Alliance has chosen the name OnGo to refer to the communication standard that will operate in this CBRS spectrum. So there is a difference between the two, but for the purposes of this call, I'm going to kind of use them interchangeably. But the CBRS Alliance officially calls the standard OnGo. And if we go to the next slide, we can talk about some of the advantages that OnGo or CBRS have over Wi-Fi, and we'll also talk about some of the advantages they have over public broadband. So first off, in terms of range, because it is your exclusive spectrum, you can operate with more power, and therefore every access point is going to have more range, and every client device in theory could have more range as well. So in practical terms, that usually works out to excuse me, to about 2 to 4 times the range of Wi-Fi. You're able to drive a lot more data across this network, so about 2 times the data capacity of Wi-Fi. If you look in the bottom right, we talked about this mobility. OnGo uses LTE communication signaling, or some of that technology, including the capability to hand devices off from one access point to another. So if you're, if you've got a security guard in a large facility and they're driving around the perimeter of that facility, as they move out of range of one CBRS access point to another access point, they're handed off. Their connection is not interrupted in any way. It works very similar to how your LTE phone works when you're in on that communications technology. You also get things like reliable sessions handling, and you also have secure data, because again, it's using some of these LTE technologies. That includes the use of SIM cards. So unlike with Wi-Fi, where literally anybody and everybody can start listening in on at least the frequency of Wi-Fi and start transmitting, if you don't have the correct SIM card, the correctly configured SIM card for your OnGo network, for your CBRS network, you're not able to participate, and that's the end of it. So it gives you a lot more security. If you're comparing it to something like public broadband, first of all, of course, it's your private network. Therefore, you decide how much coverage and how much bandwidth you're going to have in a specific place. You're not sharing it with the public. You're not dependent on a carrier. And then also that data, that data stays with you and it stays on your premises. So that's the very quick introduction to CBRS. And if we go to the next slide, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague, Jerry Gard. Jerry is our Director of Engineering and Product Management, and he'll walk you through what our MOTOTRBO NITRO product is all about. Jerry, the floor is yours.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks. So yeah, so MOTOTRBO NITRO, very exciting product for us. So let me go to the next slide. So really, with MOTOTRBO NITRO, we've combined a lot of exciting functionality into one system. So first and foremost, it's enterprise-grade private broadband utilizing the CBRS band. But on top of that, we've also integrated, business-critical voice communication on our system. So much as if you have a LMR system today, we're going to have LMR-like devices that work on our MOTOTRBO system, so you can do both private broadband data as well as business-critical voice. So why don't we jump to the next slide? So look at some of the unique things that MOTOTRBO NITRO brings along. We're going to deliver this as a service, so it's the entire network as a service. So what does that mean? So we're going to have, we actually will own the core, and we'll provide the LTE EPC core services. We'll put access points on your prem, and we will actually own those access points. It will be a subscription-based product, so you pay a monthly fee for each access point. What that means is that we will maintain that access point. We will download the software. We make sure that we're doing vulnerability scans of the software, so it'll be very, very secure, really taking all the burden out of maintaining, this large network out of your hands, and we're going to do that for you. Another very exciting feature is interoperability with your MOTOTRBO LMR system. So if you have a MOTOTRBO system today, you can, and now say you want to start putting in a private broadband network, via NITRO. You can also load some voice subscribers on your NITRO system. We will actually interoperate the voice between the NITRO system and your MOTOTRBO LMR system. So in one talk group, you can be talking on your MOTOTRBO LMR radio, talking to someone on your NITRO system, and actually that also then communicates seamlessly with someone that's on a Wave/Kodiak app on a cellular-based smartphone. So really bringing complete communications together. So very secure. So data, it's data security. We keep all the data on your prem, right? So we put the access points out there. We actually put a data gateway as an option for you on your prem. So if you want to keep your data local, you certainly can do that. Okay, so let's jump to the next slide. So as I said, this is lightning fast broadband data. So you can move freely throughout your work environment. The handoffs work great, whether you're doing voice or data. A lot of, we've seen customers that are trying to use Wi-Fi for voice communications, and you do run into problems with trying to go from one access point to the next. And as Anatoly pointed out, much better range than Wi-Fi. So in an area where today you have your Wi-Fi access points, you can cover that same area with a quarter or even fewer NITRO access points. Better data capacity because it is a controlled protocol. With Wi-Fi, you're getting a lot of collisions, a lot of interference. LTE solves all those problems for you. Okay, next slide. So here are what our access points look like. So there's on top there's an indoor access point called the SLX 2000. And then the bottom picture there is an outdoor access point. This is IP66, so you can just directly stick that on a pole, stick that on a building, and that's called the SLX 4000. So installation, you just mount it, add your power, and connect to the internet. The indoor SLX 2000 actually does support PoE as well. So in that case, just running a single cable for both network and power. So what happens, we have our hosted core. You're gonna go install these access points. Our partners will install the access points in your prem. We know what access points are installed in your building, on your campus. We know your network. So once you get your network in place, you plug in one of the access points, it's going to phone home to our core. We know exactly the configuration it's supposed to have. It's automatically downloaded, and now that access point now lights up and should come up and start transmitting. Really, we're relieving the customer or the partner of having to be LTE experts. You don't have to be an expert now in LTE to install this system. Very, very simple to install, very simple to deploy, very simple to maintain. As far as web-based management control, we actually have built a web-based portal that gives you a full view into your network, into all of your devices, fault management of your devices, performance management of your devices, many things like that. Okay, next slide. So as I was talking about the NITRO Cloud Portal. So this is all about control. You need to have control of your network. You need to be able to diagnose your network 7/24. So through this portal, not only do you provision your components, you register all your devices, you can configure your users and talk groups. That's all done over the air. So there's no more taking in your hundreds of radios and plugging in them to reconfigure your address book. That's all done over the air. Now you also can fault manage and track the network health and status. So you'll see every access point in your network in the portal. It'll tell you the status. It'll tell you the status of your backup, of the backhaul link. You can collect performance management data. So it'll tell you, say you have an access point that's getting overloaded or has a lot of UEs attached to it. You'll be able to see that data through the portal and be able to address that as you need. Okay, next slide. A little bit off the hosted core network. So basically, we have built this core, and it's in a professional, third-party, physically secure data center. So what does this do for you, right? It makes installing a NITRO system very scalable and very affordable. Very minimal startup costs. There's no huge upfront infrastructure investment. You're not paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for an LTE core. Really, all you have to do, you're paying a monthly fee for each access point. Very economical. Pay as you grow. You can start out with a small number, in one area, and as you understand how it fits your needs and use cases, you can scale that system up. So really, you have full control over the scope of all of your subscriptions. Secure and reliable. So the entire core, obviously, is all firewall protected. We're keeping the software up to date. We actually have a cybersecurity team at Motorola Solutions whose only goal in life is to make sure we understand how to protect a system such as a hosted core from cyber threats. So we have constant scanning of our software going on, constant security monitoring of our software going on. We have a full NOC and SOC that are staffed 7/24 monitoring this system. So really, we're taking this whole burden of maintaining this complicated LTE core of the customer's hands, and we're going to do all that for you. Okay, next slide. So a little bit more about the voice. Here we go. So secured in the cloud. So as I said, it's a professionally managed in our hardened and secure data center. All data is encrypted. So any data going from your access point up to the core is fully encrypted with IPsec. So you have end-to-end encryption for all your data. As I said, the software is really scanned, it's patched. We're not only keeping the core up to date with software, we're keeping all those access points up to date with software as well. You look at the what's going on your prem. The over-the-air interface is 3GP encrypted. It does require a SIM card to get access, so you actually control who gets access to your network. All prem equipment is only configured remotely with the appropriate credentials, so no one can get into an access point and make any configuration changes at all. It's all controlled centrally. And as I said, all the local traffic can stay local. So your on-prem equipment is very hardened, protected by a firewall. Really, it's all about security in these cases. All right, next slide. So we get into the voice solution a little bit more. So our first purpose-built voice device for NITRO is called the SLN1000. So it's the first ever purpose-built CBRS radio. An interesting thing about this is it's high fidelity wideband audio. Since this is LTE as the RF medium, it allows us to do wideband audio, which is very, very crisp, very clear. So you can PTT and share talk groups with all the existing LMR networks, your talk 100 wave radios, or even smartphones. Battery life up to 15 hours. And there's a built-in Wi-Fi hotspot capability, which I'll go to in more depth in a minute. It has Bluetooth and compatible with a lot of accessories that are out there already today, that work with the Talk 100, the SL300, and other SL3500E accessories. All right, next slide. Yeah, so here we talk about the hotspot functionality. So with this device, a lot of people have, Wi-Fi enabled devices today. You have Wi-Fi tablets, Wi-Fi IoT sensors, all that stuff, you're not going to go replace overnight. So this provides, our hotspot functionality provides a way to migrate from your Wi-Fi system to a NITRO CBRS based system. So what the SLN1000 can do is you put it in hotspot mode, it actually creates a personal, small little Wi-Fi hotspot. You're basically carrying this hotspot on your belt or lapel. And now you can connect your tablet or whatever kind of device you have that's running Wi-Fi to your hotspot. The hotspot now will get it onto the CBRS network. So it makes a very, very nice way to migrate, to this new technology with NITRO. Okay, next slide. So seamless voice interoperability. So I mentioned a couple of times, right? So you interoperate with your current MOTOTRBO system. So a really good way to extend, what you currently have with MOTOTRBO. You're going to seamlessly connect with your existing radios. So put your NITRO radios and your LMR MOTOTRBO radios on the same talk group, and now you're seamlessly communicating. You can add smartphones and tablets and PCs to your PT network, all with Wave software. They all communicate with voice. And you can continue to expand your PT network with existing devices with no additional CapEx or device costs. Okay, next slide. So single operator, right? So we will be the single operator of this entire network. We're accountable for the performance of your network. You can add more functionality as you go in the future. A great use case for something like NITRO, we've heard a lot about, is adding security cameras to the network. So a lot of customers they want to put security cameras out in the parking lot, or they want to put it somewhere where they just can't run fiber. NITRO is a great solution for that. You can backhaul all your video via your NITRO network, to your management system. DVS need to go, install fiber or rip up your parking lot to put fiber. Very, very nice solution for this. Okay, next slide. So the value for your entire team, right? Your front desk guys can use it, securities are going to use it, maintenance can use this. Okay, next slide. So you look at some of the use cases, obviously, hospitality is a big use case for something like this. You can see all the different ways that you could use it in a hotel or resort or convention center. Next slide. Also manufacturing, the manufacturing industry is very excited about this. There's IoT is becoming a huge play in manufacturing. So this is a very, very nice way to collect all of that IoT data wirelessly without trying to go and run new cables all over the factory. Okay, next slide. As well as buildings. Now you have shopping malls, hotels, enterprises, campuses, anything that really it kind of fits that large kind of campus area is a really great target for NITRO, whether that's a manufacturing campus, a healthcare campus, hotel, restaurant campus. Anything is going to give you great coverage indoor, great coverage outdoor. Okay, next slide. Okay, so that's really all I have on NITRO. I'm going to go throw it back to Rich.
Thanks, Jerry. I appreciate that. That was, from both of you, that was an incredibly comprehensive description of CBRS, and again, one of the best I've heard and seen lately. So you both are to be credited. Before we go to Ken, I just had a question, Jerry, that I wanted to ask you. This is for my own edification. You mentioned UEs. I'm not sure what those are. Do you want to go into that a little bit?
Oh, just end devices, whether that's a smartphone, an IoT gateway, a CBRS enabled tablet. So so a UE is just an end user device.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So now I'd like to go to Ken DeCipio from the Tavistock Group. Ken, are you with us?
Yep. Hey, Rich, how are you?
Good, Ken. How are you?
Good.
Good. So I wanted to kind of put the icing on the cake here with this presentation and talk a little bit about with you about what you're doing at the Lake Nona project that Tavistock owns in Orlando, and how you see the potential for CBRS to fit in with any of the communications challenges you may be having, you know, in your property, and how you see this potentially helping you.
Sure. So Lake Nona is a 17 square mile mixed use development. We're really building a city from the ground up. This is the first of two projects. This one's 17 square miles. The second one is 100 square miles. So what's there today is we've got several universities, multiple hotels, multiple hospitals, you know, office requirements. We're building 4 million feet of retail. And so when we start looking at in terms of how do we enhance the productivity, the efficiencies of our tenants or our occupiers, one of the big questions comes up is how do we allow them to move freely throughout the campus? So when we say the campus, it's really Lake Nona as a city. And so one of the biggest challenges we have today is how do you allow a tenant, let's say they're occupying an office space, how do we allow that tenant to use us? We view our common areas as collaboration areas. And if they can't move freely, then they don't exactly work out as those collaboration areas.
Gotcha. So do you see this particular technology assisting you, Ken, or is it?
Yeah, we do. We see it as something that would allow us to, move more freely throughout the campus. I think today our struggle is, or has been, we can't really check the box on mobility and in the current environment. So we see this as a tool that could enhance our experience with our end users. So, we're in a situation right now is that current buildings or facilities, it's easy for us because we started with a blank canvas and we're creating everything from scratch. But you don't have that mobility in today's environment.
Gotcha. So you know how I feel about the healthcare and medical things you're doing at Lake Nona, and you might want to talk a little bit about that and how would this fit together with what you're doing in that regard, and how do you see this potentially adding to the good things you're doing for the residents and tenants in Lake Nona from a healthcare and medical standpoint?
Sure. So from a healthcare and medical standpoint, where we're at today, so just to paint the picture, we have the first medical school, UCF, that's been built in 20 years. We also have HCA building an adult teaching hospital. We have a children's hospital, Nemours Children's Hospital. And then we've also got the newest, most advanced VA in the system that's also used as the National Sim Learn Center. And so where we're at in terms of as the campus environment, as the medical and the healthcare, we've been able to link those facilities right into the residential in the neighborhood. So 72% of the current residents in the neighborhoods participate in a study, which is a study that includes, gathering their wearable data, their exercise habits, their eating habits, and a certain level of their medical records.
Gotcha. And so maybe this ping pongs back. I'd like to just kind of talk to Jerry about this. So Jerry, from the standpoint of what NITRO is able to do, could that connect to the medical devices that Ken, wearables and medical devices that Ken has on site now? And how do you see that playing? Is that a reasonable expectation if someone were to install a CBRS network to connect to the wearables and the medical data that they're able to gather?
Yeah, it kind of depends on some of the wearables, but you know, definitely as we go forward here, you know, the CBRS kind of ecosystem will continue to fill out. Like today, you're not necessarily going to go get a wearable, medical device wearable that has a CBRS chipper connectivity in it, but that definitely is coming in the near future. There are solutions out there, where you can use a small gateway that some of these Wi-Fi devices can connect to, and then the gateway that connect to the CBRS network as well. So there's a couple ways to approach that.
Got it. And so, Ken, one last question for you. Um, in your travels, in your discussions, are you finding that there are folks coming forward to visit you and offer you CBRS in the campus environment in Lake Nona, or basically has that yet to happen? And how do you see, you know, who you would lean on? Obviously, a company like Motorola could help, but are you seeing people approach you yet with this technology?
You know, really not yet. And this experience, in terms of collaborating with this group here, has really opened our eyes up to what the possibilities are. You know, we've been good at putting challenges on the board and then trying to solve them, and this has been a sort of an eye-opening experience for us. As my travels around the country and visiting other, let's say, smart cities or smart facilities, and the interaction with the brokerage community who represents these occupiers, I think they're really struggling for a solution, and they're looking for you know what that solution could be. But I also think that they're being represented by, you know, site selectors and the brokerage community who have not been educated on what the possibilities are.
Great, good. Well, that's really helpful, Ken. Thank you. So before we go to questions, and we have a bunch and really good ones, I'd just like to say that we're one day after the fact, but yesterday was National First Responders Day, and what could be more appropriate for us to have Motorola on the webinar today with us, who've done so much for the first responder community. And guys, you know, we very much owe Motorola thank you for all the good work that you do in the public safety arena. So I just thought that was worth saying after the yesterday's National First Responders Day. To get to questions, the first one I thought was a really terrific question, and I wanted to put it to whichever one of you would like to handle it, either Jerry or Anatoly. What about Wi-Fi 6? Wi-Fi 6 has been widely discussed, and we have a question from the field. Can you address the emergence of Wi-Fi 6 and why it wouldn't offer a solution to the problems you've listed here for today's Wi-Fi?
Yeah, that's a great question. It comes up a lot. A couple of things. First of all, you know, the power levels are still exactly the same, right? So you still have some of those coverage issues. The second thing is, you know, it does promise maybe in some cases better mobility, but you still don't necessarily have the centralized LTE controller controlling all the mobility from access point to access point. So it is going to be better than Wi-Fi today, but it's still not going to quite get you all the way to what an LTE system really can provide for you.
Got it. Yeah, that's makes a lot of sense. Next question: how can CBRS LTE provide 2 times the data when the channel sizes are 10 megahertz for CBRS versus 80 or 160 megahertz for Wi-Fi?
Yeah, that great question, comes up all the time. You know, so you look at, you know, how we're doing CBRS LTE. You can do a 20 megahertz channel first of all, and then you can also do carrier aggregation up to 40. But really, what you're looking at is, you know, when is Wi-Fi using a 100 megahertz channel? You know, if you have a single Wi-Fi access point with a handful of user devices on it, you're going to get great throughput. Nothing's going to beat that. But what happens is when you get a couple of dozen Wi-Fi access points in a building in a confined area with hundreds of devices trying to access that Wi-Fi, that throughput rapidly declines. It basically crumbles, you know, because you have interference not only between the access points, themselves, but also with the end user devices. So this is where LTE, even though you look at the specs and the ideal specs don't match Wi-Fi. In the real world, where you're talking about all kinds of interference, all kinds of devices trying to hit your Wi-Fi channel at the same time, that's where LTE really shines, because it is a slotted and very controlled protocol.
Gotcha. So let's talk cybersecurity for a minute. There was a story that we recently saw in, I think, CNET, about a fellow who walked into and we'll leave the name of the group blank, but into a flex space situation where there was Wi-Fi, and opened his Wi-Fi portal and realized he could see the work of everyone around him. And it was kind of a little unsettling for people who are in that setting. What are the ramifications of CBRS versus Wi-Fi in terms of cybersecurity?
Yeah, when you look at cybersecurity, especially in that use case, that exact use case, since it is LTE, the access to the spectrum not only is encrypted, the spectrum itself over there is encrypted, but you need a SIM card to get access, to actually get on the network. So anyone who doesn't have, a SIM card that's primed for the current network that they're trying to get onto can't even get on the network. And on top of that, you can't just sit there and snoop at the data going over there either, because it's encrypted.
Got it. And are dual SIM phones necessary, or dual SIM devices necessary on this network, on the CBRS network, or using Motorola NITRO?
Yeah, so potentially there are a couple ways to do this. Say you have a smartphone, you want to use your smartphone on the NITRO system. A dual SIM smartphone is actually one very, very nice solution for this, where one SIM is homed onto your NITRO solution. The other SIM is homed onto the carrier. We will start seeing single SIM solutions, as well as kind of the roaming agreements get put in place between private LTE systems such as NITRO and the carrier. So I think as we go forward, you're going to see both. I think right out initially out of the chute, it's probably going to be mostly in the realm of dual SIM devices.
Gotcha. So I don't want to keep peppering you with questions, Sherry, and Anatoly can jump in at any point. But the next question was, does the portal make it easy to add APs? I think they meant APIs too. Do they mesh immediately? I thought that was a good question. I'm scratching my head on that one.
Well, I think you mean adding an access point, right? So yeah, so you're so really, NITRO is all about making it easy and simple to expand and grow, right? So say you've got your access points in place, and now you have another area you want to cover. It's going to be very simple to go add a new access point, to this new area, plug it into your network. We enable it in the portal, and really it should light up. Really within you're talking minutes, hours to have an access point up and running.
Gotcha. Before I ask the question, Ken, would you jump back in on? We were together with a group when recently in front of a commercial real estate group, when there was a company called View that has something called a smart window. It's actually window glass that can be frosted. It can be changed. Each pane of glass has its own API in it and can be accessed through the internet. Ken, do you want to just talk about that a little bit, and talk about, and we'll get Motorola to answer the question about how that might fit together with this CBRS system?
Sure. So, so View Glass is a new technology. We have tried it on several facilities at the moment. The benefits or features today is really just enhancements of the glass. So you have an IP address. We're able to change the tinting of the glass and get some efficiencies. Based on weather, based on sun, it's getting cloudy, and then the future glass that's going in will be able to manipulate and would have an antenna built in as well. So, so we're looking at, in terms of how do we incorporate these types of technologies. And again, we're a place that a lot of companies come to experiment and see how things sort of integrate together. So, our first reaction wasn't to just go out and build, 400,000 feet of View Glass. But, in conjunction with View Glass, we're seeing these benefits that would be able to enhance the experience within the space.
Gotcha. So does it seem like those kinds of things, whether it be shot sensors or glass that has an IP address or those things, could that tie in with the NITRO system in this situation using CBRS?
If you're asking me, I'm hoping so, but I think you're.
No, absolutely.
I think that was more for Jerry.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great use case for NITRO, right? So you don't have to you don't want to be running wires and cables all over or something like that. NITRO is really primed to be the backhaul, for a solution such as that.
That's fantastic. Because again, it would, the fortune it would cost you to run fiber to each one of those panes would, negate the benefit. Now, here's a really good one, and I have to tell you, this kind of, makes me think about the fires that are going on in California. We're located in the North Bay area. We've seen a total failure of cell phone signal from all the major carriers due to public safety power shutdown. Provided generator power exists on premises, could this provide continuous coverage of data and voice in these types of disaster events? What a good question.
Yeah, fantastic question. And then I would say, absolutely. One of the unique aspects of the hosted core is being, located kind of remotely. So your core is fine. You're gonna have power at your core, and if you have local power generation in your prem, that's really all you need. As long as you have your internet connectivity back to the core, that'll all operate fine. Now, another unique thing here is with our hosted core, we're talking about a core that's locally redundant as well as geographically redundant. So you can withstand, a lot of natural disasters.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a perfect usage for this. The core's off-site. This is sort of moving into the software-defined radio kind of setup, and I think it's fantastic. So with the few minutes we have left, would you like to, any of you, just make some final comments and wrap up? I'd like to make a few when you're done. If there's anything you folks would like to add, please go ahead. Jerry, you want to start first?
Just thanks for attending the webinar. We're actually very, very excited about CBRS in general. You talk about private LTE. There's been a promise of private LTE out there for years and years, and it's just never really come to fruition because of the lack of spectrum. And now we have spectrum. So we have all the ingredients you need to have a great private LTE solution. You got cheap spectrum, you got economical infrastructure, because you don't have to go buy $1 million core now to have private LTE. You put all these pieces together, it's a very economical solution. I think it's really going to help many different industries. As we talked about, you're seeing this in the manufacturing industries and the real estate industries, in the hospitality industries. You're going to see this more and more as we go forward.
Jerry, thank you. Anatoly, I had a quick one I wanted to ask you. Ken and I were at an event the other day, and they were talking about the ability for you, not literally, but to, in essence, own spectrum here with CBRS. Is that kind of your view of it too, or do you look at it a little differently, that the user of this would own the spectrum, quote unquote?
I think it's not so much own, but you have exclusive access to it, right? So you have all the benefits of quote unquote ownership without all the hassles, right? Without having to, having to have somebody that has to maintain it, that has to do all the paperwork, all the legal work that has to be done with the FCC. You've got it, it's yours. If the circumstances change, and in some locations around the country, even if you've got interference from, let's say, the military temporarily, you can be moved to a different frequency and it's completely transparent to you.
Yeah, and so this seems like for the stack that we address, mostly commercial real estate, this seems like, a perfect solution for that. Anatoly, thank you. Ken, I wanted to very much thank you for doing this. I know it wasn't the most convenient day for you, but anything you want to say to wrap up in terms of how other people listening in that are in, from the commercial real estate space might view these types of things and in the enlightened way that you have it at Tavistock and Lake Nona.
Sure. You know, take it from a group that laid 26,000 miles of fiber in Lake Nona. You know, by staying ahead of technology, we've experienced tremendous tenants and tremendous outcomes that have really kind of put us on track to be, you know, a very recognized development. As we move forward, we're trying to identify, you know, what those next, you know, enhancements are, right? So I don't come from our technology group. I'm more so working with the tenants and the strategy of where we need to move to, but we keep over and over recognizing that, you know, technology has been able to draw in those best contacts, those tenants and those clusters here at Lake Nona.
Gotcha. Well, we're almost out of time, but thank you all for being on the panel today. Anatoly Delm, Jerry Gard, and Ken DeCipio, thank you all. And we very much appreciate it. Again, the slides will be sent to you, and a recording of this event will be available in a couple of days. Thank you to Motorola for sponsoring this. And that's the end of our webinar for today. Thank you.